Travel back in time with a trip inside the Iowa's News Now vault.
A huge explosion and fire rages through the Mid-America Pipeline Company east of Iowa City at this hour. At least 5 explosions occurred just before 10 this morning, shaking the area around the company for miles and sending thick black smoke and flames hundreds of feet into the air. Iowa City Bureau Chief James Matson has been on the scene following the fire and now joins us with the very latest details. James, what's the situation?
Well, Chris, as you can tell, this is the very latest situation. We're having problems with our audio. That's why we're on the telephone right now. So as you can see, that we're about a mile and a half, or about a half mile to a mile away from the fire right now. And you can see that the flames are still shooting well over 100 feet in the air. So this is a big fire that as you can see. Now the fire is about 7 miles east of Iowa City. A pipeline that carries a combination of ethanol and propane is to blame for this fire. The blast came from inside the pumping unit. That's where some of the people were near the blast. But surprisingly, none of them were injured. Now, Chris, we did speak with one person that was right by the blast. He said that he heard one short hiss, then he heard 2 blasts that followed. Evidently, now we have reports that there were 5 blasts total. Chris?
James, we also had word that they evacuated nearby farmhouses. Any details on that?
That's right. We were actually up a little bit closer. Our photographer got right up by the scene. They have cordoned off the area now, probably, I would say, about a half-mile radius around the fire. That's just in case that there's some extra blast. And there's a slight smell in the air, and that could be another reason. Chris?
James, they're also saying at this hour that some of the fire crews are leaving the scene, claiming that the fire is under control. Yet we see flames behind you. What's the situation?
Well, evidently they have turned off 2 of the valves on this. That's what they say, that they're probably going to let this fire burn out. Now, there was a fire, I guess, here a few years back, and they did the same thing. It took them about 2 weeks for that fire to burn out. Chris?
So, James, no danger or anything for area residents at this hour?
They're saying that there is no danger for people that are living around here, but for precautionary reasons, they still have evacuated out this area.
All right, James, we're going to check in with you in a few minutes, a little later down the line, to find out the latest. Thanks. Well, James Matson reporting live from Johnson County.
About 2 hours ago, fire crews were finally able to turn off the last valve that was fueling this fire. After that happened, the flames were able to knock down, and right now they're all but out. But earlier today, that wasn't the case. As flames, you could see them from as much as miles away.
From more than 5 miles away, you could see a giant fireball shooting from the Mid-America Pipeline. A closer look shows flames stretching more than 100 feet high.
We were inside the trailer taking morning break, and we could hear a loud hissing noise. And then there was the first explosion, and after that we picked up and ran, and I don't know how many followed after that, several.
There were about 20 workers less than 200 feet away from the initial blast. Amazingly, none were injured. Crews that worked this fire count them lucky to be alive.
Anybody to walk away from this type of a situation when they were working so close is lucky.
In all, 4 fire departments were called to the scene. The first concern, to get everyone near the blaze out safe.
They were evacuated shortly after the fire started, and they'll be out until we maintain a safe place for them.
The blast came from a pumping unit that feeds propane to Iowa City more than 5 miles away. In order to get this raging fire out, they needed to cut that supply.
We determined where the nucleus of the fire was at, and we were able to close a couple more valves that could possibly have been feeding the fire. And at this point, we're just going to have to wait, make sure it subsides farther before we can go in and make any more determinations.
That being done, the firefighters could only sit and wait for the fire to eventually burn itself out.
Now, there are still some crews that are out on the scene, and they're checking to see, Bob and Amy, what actually happened to the pipeline and what actually happened to go wrong here.
James, when were the residents who were evacuated allowed to go back home?
Well, actually, they opened up the road just a little bit ago, so all the residents are able to go back, and actually they're there right now, Amy.
12 hours after the first blast, flames still flicker at the Mid-America Pipeline, and crews are keeping a close eye on what's left. It was a far different picture when the first explosion blew apart a pump, flames shooting more than 100 feet in the sky. Plant workers lucky to be alive.
You could hear a loud hissing noise, and then there was the first explosion, and after that we picked up and ran.
And firefighters scrambling to control the blaze.
At this point, we're just going to have to wait, make sure it subsides farther before we can go in and make any more determinations.
Their main concern, another explosion with huge fuel tanks just feet from the fire and no way to protect them.
There's always a chance of an explosion when you've got flammable liquids that are especially tanked up and this type of thing.
And the windows kind of shook, and I came running out into the living room, and as I walked into the living room, I could see out the front window the explosion.
Kendra Logan and her daughter live less than 300 yards from the center of the blast. They were home when the first blast hit.
And as I was leaving in our driveway, I was getting ready to turn around in the driveway and heard the second one, and it was incredible.
By late afternoon, fire crews finally closed the last valve and strangled the fire. Now the Logan family is back at home, and the blaze is under control. James Mattson, News Channel 2, Iowa City.